Look at the piece of paper that arrives in your mailbox or your inbox every 30 days. Look at the arbitrary numbers, the delivery fees, the mysterious surcharges that climb higher every single year, regardless of how much power you actually consume. You have been conditioned from birth to believe that electricity is a service that must be leased from a centralized authority. You have been taught that without the grid, you are plunged back into the dark ages. And when you finally decide to break free from this system, what is the only alternative they offer you? They tell you to finance a solar panel array for $20,000. They tell you to buy massive lithium battery walls that will degrade in 10 years and require another massive investment. They trap you in a new cycle of debt disguised as energy independence. But the truth is far more sinister, and the real solution is currently sitting in your backyard, completely ignored. We are talking about a $2 scrap metal solution that can power your low-voltage lighting and small devices indefinitely. If you are tired of being held hostage by the grid and paying endless fees for basic survival needs, drop the word hostage in the comments right now. We want to know how many people are dealing with this exact problem. The global electric power transmission and distribution market is a $3.5 trillion industry. Let that number sink in. $3.5 trillion relies entirely on your continued dependency. To maintain this empire, they rely on manufactured complexity. They need you to believe that generating electricity requires highly processed silicon, rare earth minerals mined on the other side of the planet, and proprietary software that only their technicians can service. But energy generation, at its core, is just the movement of electrons, and the earth beneath your feet is the largest, most stable, and most accessible reservoir of moving electrons on this planet. This is not a new invention. It is not a modern life hack. It is a fundamental law of physics that was intentionally erased from our educational systems and our engineering textbooks. We are reconstructing a piece of technology that predates the modern power grid, a technology that was systematically buried because it threatened the very foundation of the centralized energy cartel. The magnitude of this deception traces back to the year 1841. A Scottish inventor named Alexander Bain was developing early telegraph systems. Telegraphs required a constant, reliable source of low-voltage electricity to send signals across vast distances. In the mid-19th century, chemical batteries existed, but they were fragile, expensive, and required constant maintenance and dangerous acids. Bain discovered something terrifying to the early energy monopolies. He discovered that he did not need the glass jars, the expensive acids, or the laboratory conditions. If he simply buried plates of zinc and copper in the damp earth, the soil itself acted as a massive, free, and infinite electrolyte. He successfully powered entire telegraph lines across the United Kingdom using nothing but the dirt in the ground and scrap metal. He created the first recorded Earth battery. It worked constantly, day and night, rain or shine, without any moving parts and without any monthly subscriptions. They did not hide it because it failed. They hid it because it worked too well. As the Industrial Revolution accelerated, the copper barons and the coal magnates realized the danger of telluric currents and earth batteries. You cannot patent dirt, and what you cannot patent, you cannot build a billion-dollar industry on. The narrative shifted. The engineering focus was deliberately steered away from passive, earth-based power generation and toward active, consumable power generation. They wanted systems that required fuel. They wanted systems that required constant replacement parts. They demanded recurring revenue. This is how we ended up with the modern paradigm. We traded a permanent, free infrastructure for a fragile, expensive one. The science they tried to suppress is well documented. In 1987, an electrochemical engineer named Robert Barker published a comprehensive historical review on galvanic corrosion and soil conductivity in the Journal of Electrochemical Engineering. The modern industry uses the term corrosion to describe the degradation of metals in the ground. They sell you billions of dollars worth of chemical coatings, sacrificial anodes, and protective sleeves to stop this corrosion. But what is corrosion, scientifically speaking? It is simply the flow of electrons from one metal to another through an electrolytic medium. The industry framed this natural electron flow as a destructive enemy that must be fought with expensive products. Barker and the early pioneers knew the truth. That flow of electrons is literally electricity. The industry takes a natural power source, labels it a structural problem, sells you the cure to stop the power generation, and then sells you a separate, expensive battery to provide the power you just neutralized. It is a perfectly engineered cycle of financial extraction. This is the part where the numbers become uncomfortable. According to a 2023 residential solar and battery storage cost analysis by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, the average homeowner is paying exorbitant premiums, not just for the panels, but for the sophisticated charge controllers, the inverters, and the chemical storage banks. These systems are designed with planned obsolescence in mind. Your expensive lithium storage will lose capacity every single year. The components are sealed in proprietary plastic cases that you cannot repair. You are not buying independence. You are prepaying for your dependence on a different set of corporate entities. Made it this far, you already know more about this than 99% of consumers. Subscribe and share this to protect this knowledge before the industry tries to erase it again. Stay with me, because what happens next completely dismantles their trillion-dollar business model. We are going to build an earth battery using scrapyard materials that cost less than a cup of coffee. The concept relies on harnessing the natural galvanic reaction between two dissimilar metals using the moisture and minerals in your native soil as the bridge. The internet is full of misinformation designed to make you fail. If you search for earth batteries, you will find videos of people sticking two shiny nails into dry potting soil, reading 0 volts on a multimeter, and declaring the whole concept a myth. That is exactly what the industry wants you to see. They want you to think this is a childish science experiment that cannot do any real work. Most people do this wrong and ruin their materials, ultimately giving up and going back to buying commercial batteries. Here is the only step that guarantees results. The secret is not just the metal. It is the surface area, the distance, and the soil conditioning. You need 2 specific types of scrap metal. One must be a highly anodic metal, which acts as the electron donor. Zinc is the most accessible. You do not need to buy pure zinc plates. Go to a scrapyard or look in your garage for old, heavily galvanized roofing metal, galvanized pipes, or even cheap galvanized brackets. The second metal must be cathodic, acting as the electron receiver. Copper is ideal. Old plumbing pipes, stripped electrical wire, or discarded copper flashing will work perfectly. You now have your 2 poles. To assemble this system, find a location in your yard that remains naturally damp, perhaps near a downspout or in a shaded garden bed. Dry dirt is an insulator. Moist, mineral-rich dirt is an exceptional conductor. Dig a narrow trench. Place your zinc scrap and your copper scrap into the earth. They must not touch each other. They should be separated by about 12 to 18 inches of soil. This soil between them is your battery acid, provided by nature for free. When the moisture in the ground interacts with the zinc, it causes the zinc atoms to oxidize, releasing free electrons. Because the copper is a more noble metal, it pulls those free electrons through the soil matrix. Connect a wire to the piece of zinc and another wire to the piece of copper. You have just intercepted that natural electron flow. You have created a permanent electrical circuit. One pair of these scrap metals will generate between 0.7 and 1.1 volts of electricity, depending on the mineral content of your soil. On its own, that is not enough to power much, but this is where the geometry of power comes in. Just like the commercial batteries you buy at the store, you can wire these earth cells in series to multiply the voltage. If you bury 5 pieces of zinc and 5 pieces of copper, alternating them in the trench, and wire the first zinc to the second copper, the second zinc to the third copper, and so on, you will multiply that voltage. 5 pairs will give you around 4 to 5 volts. That is exactly the voltage needed for a standard universal serial bus charger. 10 pairs will push your system toward the 12-volt threshold. With a 12-volt earth battery made of scrap metal and dirt, you can permanently power light-emitting diode pathway lights, small water pumps for a garden, or security sensors. Because the earth is constantly replenishing its moisture and the metals degrade incredibly slowly when spaced correctly, this setup can provide continuous steady power for years, sometimes decades, without you ever touching it again. It does not care if the sun is shining. It does not care if the wind is blowing. It does not care if the central grid collapses under the weight of a winter storm or a cyber attack. It just works, silently and relentlessly, drawing power from the very ground you stand on. The energy monopolies have spent millions in marketing to convince you that generating your own power is a luxury only the rich can afford. They have engineered a society that is terrified of the dark and completely dependent on their fragile infrastructure. The laws of nature are not proprietary. The galvanic scale does not require a monthly subscription. They buried the science. We dig it up. The power to reclaim your independence is literally lying in the scrap heap, waiting for you to plug it into the dirt. Implement this system, scale it up, share the schematics with your neighbors. Once you realize that the earth itself is the ultimate power source, the grid becomes nothing more than an expensive, obsolete illusion.